Good morning from Zurich. You're listening to Monocle on Sunday. I'm Tyler Brûlé. Coming up on today's program here at Dufourstrasse, I'm joined by Juliet. Linley is here. Also, Myriam Zumbühl. She's also just back from the United States. Juliet, you've been looking at the papers. There's a lot to get through today. But what's caught your eye this morning?
Well, the Pope has just created 21 new princes of the church, cardinals, including one from Toronto. I knew you'd love that piece of information.
All for me. I love it.
Right? The Catholic that you are. Plus, Switzerland is top of the pops in terms of innovation. Zurich is apparently top of the charts in terms of cities for expats. And then just for Emma and for you, how many of us are going to have a happy, tacky Christmas? Because that's what's coming up. Okay,
we will monitor that one for sure. We'll also be heading to Istanbul to get the latest on Syria.
I'm Hannah Lucinda Smith in Istanbul, and coming up in the next hour, the end for President Assad. After a 10-day advance, opposition groups have taken control of Damascus. I'll be talking about how it happened and what comes next.
And we'll also be chatting to our correspondent in Singapore, Naomi Xu Elegant. And of course, we'll be talking to some stallholders from this Christmas market. It's the 8th of December, 2024. Live from Zurich, this is Monocle on Sunday.
Live from Zurich, this is Monocle on Sunday with Tyler Brûlé.
And good morning from a dry, rather chilly Zurich this morning. I'm very happy to say that the market is already alive and buzzy. Myriam Zumbühl is here, of course, correspondent for Confect, also a regular byline also in the NZZ. Juliet Linley, of course, regular, almost too regular contributor. I don't know how many weeks you've been here on the trot with us. Anyway, but always good to have you here as well. Myriam, you're just back from the US, which of course is lovely to have you here.
Thank you.
But what took you across the pond?
So leisure. There was Thanksgiving, which I spent in West Palm Beach for the first time in my life, and it was a happy, rich bubble, but it was wonderful just to have my toes in the sand, and it was gorgeous weather. It was wonderful. But then I went to Detroit for the first time in my life. Did I pronounce that right? Detroit.
Detroit's good. That will do the trick.
And I was fascinated how much innovation is happening in the city. I saw the newly opened, refurnished, or renovated Central Michigan Station. And I went to Newla, which is like a huge innovation center. I met people who were working on the future in ways that I couldn't believe it. It was wonderful. So I was there for a project. I'm building public gardens to build resilience for mental health. And it looks like we're going to do one in Detroit because there is lots of land. So it was the opposite from Zurich, to be honest. It was wonderful to be there. I enjoyed it. And New York, of course. Wonderful Christmas cheer there.
Of course. Juliet, we're going to come back to you in a moment. We're actually going to cross right now to Istanbul to get the latest, of course, on developments in Syria, particularly Damascus right now. Hannah Lucinda Smith is our correspondent there. Good morning, Hannah.
Good morning.
So, of course, you gave us a little bit of a teaser as to what's unfolding. We saw that this was likely going to happen, but yes, I think for those listeners who are just tuning in and maybe not seeing what's on screens at the moment, what is the latest? From Damascus, but Syria in general.
Yeah, I mean, absolutely extraordinary scenes this morning. And, really this advance by the rebels over the past 10 days took everyone by surprise, not just journalists and analysts, but also Syrians themselves. Talking to Syrian friends over the past few days, most of them outside the country having had to leave, they are also stunned by this. But in the early hours of this morning, the rebels, having surrounded Damascus pretty much from all sides, entered the city. It does appear that President Assad, or the erstwhile President Assad, has fled the country. The Prime Minister, on the other hand, has stayed. He's calling on the rebels to talk with him and to form some kind of unity government. At the moment, I mean, people are just celebrating. This is almost 14 years since those first protests against Bashar al-Assad broke out. And there was a long time there where it did seem that Assad, although seriously weakened, would hang on in his palace. Of course, he had the backing of Russia, also of Iran. What's happened in the past week is that backing has just crumbled. All the people that he'd relied on over the past decade to stay in power have deserted him. And now Damascus is under the control of rebel groups.
Hannah, let's maybe just think when we talk about allies. Where is Russia in all of this? Because we've heard again over the last 24 hours. Yes, of course, clearly a lack of backing, but also curious as well. Very very early on, if you looked at certain intelligence briefings, etc., you saw most of the Russian fleet going out to sea. Obviously, no naval vessels. Certainly left in Tartus, where they've had a long-standing base. What happened there?
Yeah, this is the really big question. There are several big questions here, and this is one of them. Russia has invested absolutely billions of dollars in Syria over the past, particularly since 2015. It's always had this naval base in Tartus. That's been there since the Cold War. The Soviet Union was also a major ally of Syria in that time. And it was a major strategic asset, or is a major strategic asset for Putin. We saw, over the years, ships going back and forth from the Black Sea through the Bosphorus, going there, and it was really kind of Russia's strength in the Mediterranean. Now, what we should say, although Damascus is under the control of these rebel groups, mainly Hayat Tahrir al-Sham, they are still not in control of this coastal strip. That includes Latakia, which is President Assad's home city and the heartland of his Alawite minority, and also Tartus. And I think one of the big questions here is what kind of deals is Russia trying to cut, principally with Turkey, who's been the main backer of these rebel groups and has also pretty clearly had a very major hand in this offensive over the past 10 days. And if it is just giving up its assets in Syria, why? Because that's a major thing to give up.
Just Hannah, well, on that, I'm just curious when we think about, the various players. You think about, again, that coastal strip, and it brings me to, yes, you see, if we're looking at the monitors, here in studio right now, yes, some level of rejoicing on various streets in various cities across Syria. Who's not going to be thrilled by this? Obviously you talk about, of course, the stronghold of the Alawite communities, but who is not thrilled? Because, I think we've always sort of seen, and this is a story which has played out, of course, many times over the decade, a strong man falls and statues are toppled. But of course, there's always going to be a constituency who's not so thrilled to see this happen.
Yeah, absolutely. And I think we have to look a little bit into who these opposition groups are. I'm using this term rebels, and really that's kind of a bit of a lazy shorthand. Always the rebel groups have been an absolute mishmash of people with different priorities, different backers, and different ideologies as well. Now, Hayat Tahrir al-Sham started back in 2011, 2012 as a group called Jabhat al-Nusra, which was directly linked to al-Qaeda. It was the al-Qaeda franchise in Syria. What's happened over the past few years is that its leader, Abu Muhammad al-Jilani, has really tried to rebrand that group. He's both tried to show it as technocratically capable, so the area that's controlled for a very long time in Idlib and Aleppo province, a small area close to the Turkish border, which contained many refugees from other areas of the country who'd fled Assad's advances. He's really trying to show that he's capable of ruling those areas, providing public services, but also trying to kind of rebrand the ideology of the group. And it's been really interesting over the past week to see how the fighters are really trying to reach out to Christian communities, particularly when you've had incidents like Christmas trees being torn down. They've been very keen to put them back up and discipline the fighters that did that. That seems to be working to a certain extent. We've seen both Christian communities and Druze communities in various parts of the country sort of welcoming or seeming to welcome this advance, whether that's, out of pragmatism or out of, genuine enthusiasm. That's unclear, but certainly they do seem to be making an effort. I think it becomes far more complicated when you're talking about these Alawite areas, because it is the Alawite minority that was in charge of Assad's armed forces, the groups that committed the major atrocities against rebel-controlled areas. And don't forget, a lot of these fighters, the majority of these fighters who are taking part in this advance, they're not originally from these areas of Idlib and Aleppo. They are people who have been displaced from other areas. They're people who are fighting their way back home to places like Ghouta, like Daraya, where we saw the chemical gas attacks in 2013 perpetrated by Assad's forces. There's a huge amount of anger. There has been so many atrocities, so many deaths in Syria. And, I think it was very, very telling that in this advance, Hayat Tahrir al-Sham made no attempt at all to try and advance into those Alawite areas. And I think what will be happening behind the scenes now, probably in negotiations between Turkey, Russia, Iran, Qatar, all these outside players, is exactly what's going to happen to this area, because I think it would be very, very hard for any group to keep control over their fighters when you've had more than a decade of atrocities committed.
And we're just looking at Reuters right now. They're actually reporting, that Assad has died actually in a plane crash. This is Reuters, saying that, al-Assad died in a plane crash, according to two Syrian sources. But this is what Reuters is reporting right now. And also they're actually using as a source Flight Radar 24, which is a tracking website, saying that he was on an Ilyushin 24, which disappeared, somewhere in a flight last night. I don't know if you have anything on that at the moment. I'm sort of looking at, of course, other news sources right now, BBC, Al Jazeera, not reporting that yet. But do you have anything on that?
Wow. I mean, it's extraordinary, isn't it? I mean, I've been watching almost obsessively that same Flight Radar 24 app over the past 2 days. And in particular, I was watching one private jet going back and forth between Abu Dhabi and Damascus. It went back and forth 4 times in the space of 24 hours. So clearly moving something or someone out of the country. But then also there were other flights. There were Shamwings, which is the Syrian national carrier, doing various flights. This is just absolutely extraordinary, isn't it? I mean, if this is the case, again, more questions. Was he on the way to Russia and something has happened? Is this an assassination? I think there are just so many questions about this.
Hannah, we want to bring in our editor-in-chief, Andrew Tuck, is in London this morning for us. Andrew, good morning.
Good morning, Tyler.
I don't know if you've just obviously following this news. This is, of course, two Syrian, groups claiming that this has occurred. Now, I don't think that there is any evidence, confirmed that obviously that there's been a recovery of Assad's body. But of course, this is what we're reading, and obviously Reuters is reporting that right now. I just want to, while we sort of get across actually what is happening, and maybe looking for some other sources right now. This is just before going into this, we were talking to Hannah about, of course, who benefits from this, but also we've had the sort of repetition of a story. We see, of course, strong men, of course, leave the region, and then, of course, we see, of course, this level of course, disarray, dissemblance, which happens in these countries, and I sort of go back to, when we also talk about not just politically, or groups that are sort of have political investment in this, but also culturally as well. I mean, you speak to, of course, many Christians. I mean, even some Jews who live in Damascus. I'm not saying that they're sort of waving Assad flags, but they felt that they had a level of cover. Of course, just the way that, of course, part of the Assad regime's not just under of course this one, but also the father as well. There's this level of trying to, in a way, in many ways, of course, in a region with so many disparate groups, keeping a lid on things. And I'm just wondering what your take is on that. Given time, of course, you've spent across the border in Lebanon as well.
Yeah, it's interesting this morning with the Prime Minister saying that he's going to stay in post and he will oversee a handover of power and calling for elections in the country. And what's interesting is the opposition saying, yes, they also want him to stay in power and they don't want any ransacking of government buildings. They want to see public property protected. So I think, as Hannah was suggesting, there is a hint here that they've seen what happened after the fall of Gaddafi, after the fall of Saddam Hussein, and they know the turmoil that can come in place. And they are making some signs and signals that they do want to protect the various sects and religions that are in Syria. But as you say, in a weird way, there was this kind of, for middle class many Syrians, especially in Damascus or in Latakia, there was still a sense of a kind of a cosmopolitan life unfolding. And those people will be nervous today about what this means, because you're seeing already calls from Al-Qaeda operatives saying this is an opportunity to cleanse the country of the infidels. You're seeing today news coming out of Kabul, congratulations from the government there to the Syrian rebels, hoping that they will enforce Sharia law in the same way that it's in Afghanistan. Now, I don't think that's going to happen. But you see, as Hannah suggested, there are so many players involved in this. So it'll be interesting to see what happens over the coming days.
Hannah, just going back to just maybe swiftly, but we can always, of course, come back to you later on in the program if anything else of significance develops. Of course, hard to look at any crystal balls, of course, where this goes. But who's the broker in all of this now? Is this an Ankara game? Because obviously, if you're Tehran right now, you have to be sitting there scratching your head, wondering how this happened at such speed. But at the same time, we also see that this is a case where people were clearly not just cutting ties, but also cutting Assad off. I'm sure if people, if certainly forces and allies had wanted to mobilize, they could have, but they didn't.
Yeah, I mean, I think there's been a sense across the region of countries losing patience with Assad. He was, of course, welcomed back into the Arab League in May last year. It sort of looked like his rehabilitation. But, he was still incredibly weak. Syria's economy was in a mess. Refugees still didn't want to return. And also, another thing, Syria had become a major source across the region for the production of captagon, which is a major problem, particularly in Saudi Arabia. So I think a lot of people had, lost patience with him. But also with Iran, I mean, Hezbollah has been seriously weakened due to Israel's operations in Lebanon over the past few months. And really, from Iran's point of view, they've just seen this project that was started by Qasem al-Soleimani, the former head of the Revolutionary Guard, this idea of creating this Shia arc of influence going all the way from Tehran to the Mediterranean through various proxy groups in Iraq and also in Syria. That has absolutely crumbled. I mean, it must be a bad day in Tehran at the moment. But I think if we're talking about the kind of major winners internationally, certainly Turkey's President Erdogan. And over the past 10 days, he's become more and more bullish in his statements. He started off, or his foreign minister, Hakan Fidan, started off by saying, Turkey has no hand in this. We're just concerned about humanitarian issues. We just don't want any more refugees coming over the Turkish border. To President Erdogan coming out after Friday prayers 2 days ago and saying, God willing, the rebels are going to reach Damascus. And of course, that's something that he's been looking for right since 2011, when he first cut ties with President Assad, who, let's not forget, was a personal friend of Erdogan before the Arab Spring kicked off. Really, Erdogan has been seeing for the past decade the chance of a government in Damascus, a new regime in Damascus, Islamist, if not fully Sharia law, but certainly Islamist in the kind of sense of Muslim Brotherhood type Islamist, in which that he will have major influence. So I think, if there's any winner at the moment, it's Turkey and President Erdogan.
Analyst Inna Smith in Istanbul. Perhaps we'll catch up with you just before the end of this program. I'm going back to Andrew in London. Andrew, just from I guess there's a lot of negotiating that needs to happen. We're not just talking about, of course, what has to, unfold in Syria. We can also, of course, look at another news headline this morning as well, where we, of course, have seen President-elect Donald Trump in Paris, there for the reopening of Notre Dame, of course, last night. A little bit of state making on the side of President Macron, bringing together, of course, Volodymyr Zelensky and Trump, a very sort of, in the forecourt of the Elysee. I mean, this, very, very symbolic imagery, big handshakes, a lot of slapping on the back. And then, of course, this morning, in a way, sort of Trump coming good, Andrew, on saying that this is going to be a moment where we have to be looking at negotiations, etc. This is almost set in stone. This is what is going to happen. Amazing, just from an optical point of view as well. We've had President Biden in Angola. almost barely any imagery out of there. We were talking to actually a visitor to the market yesterday whose family's in London, just saying, yeah, sort of that city sort of locked down completely for 3 days. Oddly, that didn't even get much of a blip on the world stage. Of course, all eyes on not just, of course, the president-elect, but also, of course, everything unfolding around him. And we will also talk about those fantastic, of course, cassocks and everything that we saw on television last night. Some amazing Catholic pageantry. But we'll come back to that, Andrew. But just your take on what we saw yesterday in Paris.
Well, I think you read it right. It's fascinating to see that, in effect, Trump is already the president. And yesterday we heard of talks that he's already being involved in to try and broker a peace with the Israelis for Gaza. And we know that he's a stalwart supporter of the Israelis, so we can imagine what his take on that is. And it was interesting to see him saying about Syria, it's not our war, let's stay out of it, which perhaps isn't unwise advice at this time. But with Zelensky, it's also interesting that Zelensky is already changing his tune because he knows he has to, as Trump comes to power, and saying, yes, we will look at a peace deal. We know there's going to be a peace deal now that President Trump is coming in. And actually, it's interesting for all the support that Biden gave to the Ukrainians, there was never an off-ramp other than this idealized vision that we will win back all territory, including Crimea. So for all the complaints and faults, and we'll see what happens, it's interesting how the return of Donald Trump is already really remapping many of these geopolitical conflicts in interesting ways.
Andrew, just why don't we go maybe rewind some 12 hours ago when, of course, we had this, our screens were sort of lit up, and I want to bring Juliet in on this as well. We should probably actually have a fashion edit or two around this. But, I, on one side, poor Paris, because here they had, a major inauguration, again, under just the soggiest, windiest skies. So it was just like of course, they did a fantastic job in the opening ceremony. It was, but of course, it was a rather damp one. Same thing last night. But you had the world there, and it was interesting, so much of the narrative, not just on French networks, but also that you had this pledge by Macron saying that they were going to, of course, rebuild Notre Dame within 5 years. They did that. And in a way, sort of playing to so many of the topics that we talk about, that here you saw brand France when it came to everything from carpentry, of course, to weaving, to glasswork, that all of the various métiers that you have all over France. This was a coming together, a culmination of all of this. And I mean, and what a spectacle. And I'm just, first and foremost, Andrew, what did you make of sort of these extraordinary Jean Castelbajac, amazing, they call him JCDC, I think. That's it. We'll call him JCDC. Jean-Charles de Castelbajac, those amazing cassocks and just, sort of the modernization of it as well.
No, it looked extraordinary. And as you say, as a symbol, this is a strange thing that Macron at home has so many problems. But when he comes to these big plays, as in the past, many French presidents have been good at these grands projets. He can pull them off. The Olympics came good. When you saw Notre Dame yesterday, it's so bright and so cleaned up and so renewed, yet holding on to tradition and the past, an emblem for France. You see, as you say, that they're coming together, all the artisans and the craft people needed to rebuild this church. It's what he's been striving to do, I guess, as a president, but he can't pull off with the citizenry, but he can in these big symbols. So in a way, as you say, what an amazing soft pag play yet again. I think around the world, it kind of bolsters this view of France as stylish, of craft base, of understanding beauty, of having this heritage, which in a way doesn't play so well at home. We know that people just didn't go to the Olympics; they fled Paris. But here, I think there is more investment from French people in this story. So I think it was a priceless piece of public relations for France.
Myriam and Juliet, reflections on the pageantry and what unfolded. Juliet, of course, as a former Vatican correspondent, how did you see the stage managing and the scenography of this?
Incredibly beautiful, and the lighting, the light show, incredible. I haven't seen that at St. Peter's Basilica so far, but if you did want to talk about cassocks, we can move to Rome and to the blood red cassocks of the 21 new cardinals, they wear a red zucchetto and a red cassock to symbolize their willingness to die for their faith, the blood red color. Do you want to go into that?
Okay, let's give us a quick rank. I know we've got one from Toronto, so maybe Myriam, just quickly, but your take on what you saw yesterday.
To Paris, I want to go. I want to go. I want to see this. And there is something very important that Andrew just said. So they didn't want to go to the Olympics, but there is another layer to this. It ties so deeply into the DNA of the French. And mind me say, I'm not a very religious person, but wherever I travel, I go and visit a church. And there is something about it. It's a place that belongs to the people. It's however busy life is, there is a place for reflection and peace and in the crazy world that we live. Just this morning, I want to go and sit in it. I want to go and sit there. I want to go to Notre Dame just for an hour and be there. I love it.
And I think this is going to be also big. I think this is going to be a big comeback moment because we can all remember Jean-Charles de Castelbajac, his kind of very sort of, epic sort of, model skipping down the runway show. So I wonder if this also becomes a bit of a reignition moment for him. Juliet, very quickly, we've got to head to London for the news, but the highlights. Oh, I don't need all 21 cardinals. Just give me the 5 ones. We've got Toronto,
Tehran, Tokyo, the 3 Ts.
Okay, so Tehran's getting a cardinal?
Tokyo, Japan as well, yes.
Okay.
And
who's the cardinal from Japan?
I'll get back to you with his exact name.
Oh, right. We might have had the names. Okay. I don't know. You never know.
But far from the sort of spiritual, very magical portrayal that Myriam was giving of Notre Dame and why she wants to go and visit and so on, this for me is such a political story because these 21 new cardinals are essentially Francis's putting his stamp on who will be his successor. So he now has had 10 consistories. That is the term that you use when you nominate or you create cardinals. And that means that the majority of the voting cardinals, remember that if you're over 80, you can be a cardinal, but you can't vote, so you can't choose the next pope. So the majority of them have been chosen by him. They're mainly from non-first world countries, if you want, mainly sort of from his
somehow Japan and Canada snuck in though. But
no, that's
anyway, but yeah.
But you have, I think it's 5 from Latin America. You've got 2 Africans. You get it, I know. And so therefore, of course, perhaps riling the ultra-conservative Catholics who are, of course, not going to perhaps get a chance to get one of them in when and if Bergoglio either chooses to retire, which is not, it has not happened in the past, as we know his predecessor did so, or passes away. Now, he turned up at the ceremony with a massive bruise on his chin. I know that you noticed that. Yeah, very, very dark bruise. Apparently, his spokesperson said that he had hit it on his nightstand. But this is also a gentleman
reaching for your mobile phone. Complicated,
his
right?
Rosary. He was reaching for his rosary. But he also has back problems, knee problems. He's in a wheelchair. So let's see. He turns 88 this month.
Okay, Andrew.
How's your chin?
Yeah,
Andrew.
Andrew. Meanwhile, back in the UK, just before we go to the news, what's happening over there?
Well, just one thing that's in our world, Tyler. The sale has now been agreed of the Observer newspaper, this old, very much respected Sunday newspaper that's been owned by The Guardian and the Scott Trust, and they're going to offload it. And it's been back and forth. The Guardian were on strike last week. They've had more strike days coming off. They tried to put up an alternative offer. But in the changing world of media, it's being sold to essentially a podcast producer, Tortoise Media, who have perfected a kind of model which they call kind of slow journalism, long form. But it's amazing to see this big newspaper being handed off an investment of not a huge amount of money, of £25 million. They claim they're going to be able to grow it and rebuild it and make it into something new. But I think many journalists in the more traditional newspaper landscape are concerned about that this morning.
Andrew, just on that, as a former Sunday newspaper man, your take on it, because of course you might be heading out to the newsstand soon. We've got some Sunday papers and some weekend papers which are in very good health, and there is still, of course, a weekend ritual. Do you think this is a shrewd move because, of course, we just had our media conference in Paris. We talked about the success of something like Die Zeit, which is a weekly newspaper. It is on Sunday. They've grown. They've managed to grow, of course, in print, but of course, grown incredibly well, also digitally as well. A good move, and I guess it just begs the question: did the Guardian need the cash? Why have they offloaded this thing? Or, yeah, and maybe I guess for our listeners, or has it always been a bit of an odd pairing of the two when they came together?
Well, it seems to make sense at the beginning because they had similar political perspectives and they had some similar traditions. But it's always been a poor kind of deal for the Observer because as it moved into a digital world, The Guardian had no ability to switch its website being the Observer website on a Sunday. So even though the Observer was generating great stories, they would all come under the Guardian banner on digital. And that's where the effort for The Guardian has gone into digital. So the Observer brand online was almost non-existent. You barely knew it was there. So it had to hold on to what was happening in newsprint. And for the Sunday newspapers, that world has changed. I worked for a newspaper that no longer puts out a print edition on a Sunday. So at least they had a lineup of it was the Independent, so they had the Independent daily and the Independent on Sunday. At least it matched. But here you had this newspaper that was just lost under the blanket of the Guardian and the coverage. So there is an opportunity for it. It's just that the amount of investment we know in this media world for a big newspaper like that to turn itself around, it doesn't seem vast. And it'll be interesting to see what the ambitions are. But as you say, there is definitely potential.
Andrew Tuck, our editor-in-chief in London. Andrew, I'll see you Thursday morning, bright and early, because of course, and it's a Christmas market weekend. We've got a summit of correspondents in London as of course we approach year end. It's just coming up to 35 minutes past the hour right now. You're listening to Monocle on Sunday. We're live in Zurich, but now back to London. Emma Nelson is there at the news headlines.
Thank you very much indeed, Tyler. There are unconfirmed reports that the Syrian President Bashar al-Assad has died in a plane crash after fleeing the capital Damascus. The aviation tracker Flight Radar 24 shows a Syrian air flight vanishing near Homs. It comes as rebels have taken control of Damascus, bringing to an abrupt end a quarter of a century under Bashar al-Assad's rule and 5 decades of rule by his family. South Korea's ruling party has announced it will organise an orderly exit for the country's president Yoon Suk-yeol. Yesterday, Yoon survived an impeachment vote following an attempt last week to impose martial law. One of the most important and best-loved buildings in France, Paris's Notre Dame Cathedral, has been formally reopened more than 5 years after a devastating fire razed the roof to the ground. Dignitaries, including the US President-elect Donald Trump and the Ukrainian President Volodymyr Zelensky, filled the cathedral for the ceremony. And the Pope has been given a new fully electric Pope-mobile, equipped with a rotating heated seat and special places for the Swiss Guards to stand to protect the pontiff. The white vehicle, built by Mercedes-Benz, is also fitted with a heated handrail, a retractable roof to protect him from the elements, and a raised seat to give crowds a better chance of seeing him as he drives by. And those are the headlines. Back to you, Tyler, in Zurich.
Okay, I have to ask you a question about this rotating seat. Is this because... So this means he doesn't have to then sort of, spin around. So it's actually sort of, it's just always he's like on a rotisserie, but just a vertical one.
I sincerely hope
Juliet,
that...
do you have insight on this?
I do have the insight. I can hardly imagine him being on a rotisserie. But he does need to see all angles of St. Peter's Square or all angles of wherever he travels to. And he is a widely travelled pontiff, isn't he?
Yeah, well, indeed he is. Emma, I haven't seen a picture. Well, and two things. Going back to a political topic, is this an issue? Here you are in Italy. Of course, we're talking about a global church. Of course, the church wants the best in design. They want the best for their pope. But would you be a bit upset if you were one of the Elkans? Is John Elkan upset right now?
With how Stellantis is doing.
Well, with how Stellantis is doing. So, would you say there's maybe a little bit of upset that he didn't go for? Yeah, I mean...
Possibly, but he has been gifted so many sort of Maseratis and Lamborghinis.
Sure.
That maybe this was the moment when the Germans decided to step in.
Emma, what's your take?
I think, honestly, if you were buying a Toyota Land Cruiser, you might want to have second thoughts about this. It is the most handsome of vehicles.
Can I tell you about
listen,
we want to talk about Land Cruisers for the next 23 minutes.
What's the colour? Beige?
I've got a...
What colour is it, Tyler?
Beige. It's Mystic Bronze.
Beige.
No, it's not. not beige.
Super beige. I saw it with my own eyes.
Listen.
Emma.
Okay, no. On the topic of wheels, I of course I do have a heated steering wheel.
Does it revolve?
So do I.
Does it turn around?
Okay, good.
Does
good,
it
good.
rotate?
Does it rotate?
Well, I hope the steering wheel
The
rotates
wheel.
would be a problem. Yeah. Anyway, that's
And it's bulletproof, no? Like most Land Cruisers around
okay.
the world.
Now, Emma, just
Yes.
to stay with us for one moment because we're heading to Singapore in a moment. But Julia, I want you to set up the story for us because, and Myriam, this has been a very big week for Zurich. It's a world of rankings.
Yeah.
Of course, we've just had the Mercer Quality of Life Index, not quite the Monocle Quality of Life Index, though there is a considerable area of overlap. But, of course, the world's, leading most livable cities. Livable cities when we're talking about expats, when we're talking about, and they've kind of moved on a little bit from expats, people who need to be mobile and out there in the world. And, of course, this city did incredibly well.
Top of
Did
the
it not,
pops, really.
Right? Are you feeling good about that?
We're feeling great, aren't we, Myriam? Myriam is just stunned that Bern made it to number 9. She said, how the heck?
Yeah.
But no, Zurich, you're looking a bit suspicious, Myriam.
Well, now don't call me anti-Swiss. I'm very happy about the outcome, and I couldn't agree more. But. So, top of the list for innovation. I agree that we Swiss had
Now
invented.
you've moved on to the other index.
Oh, sorry.
Yeah.
Okay.
Looking at
No,
best
quality.
cities.
So we say with the quality of it. Yes, I agree. I couldn't agree more. It's
Zurich.
this is
Quality
the
of
reason
life.
also why I again and again return to Zurich and not to Bern, because life here is incredibly. I mean, it's wonderful.
It's easy, isn't it?
You know,
It's
I
incredibly
sometimes
good.
swim to work.
What?
Sometimes
Did you
when
just
I-
say you
no,
swim to
when I
work?
have a meeting in the city, and then sometimes I, take my swim bag with me and I just float down
Get
the Limmat
outta
and I go
here.
home. Yeah. So this
I
is
know
unheard
Emma's
of. No.
looking stunned
Yes.
on
No,
the
it's
other end of the
beautiful. And
line.
I think we have everything. I was just talking to a friend in the States and he said, why is Switzerland and why is Zurich why does it work so well? And then I had to say, yes, we do have a lot of bureaucracy. Is that the word? So there's like a rule for everything. But this is the foundation why everything works so well here. And it's pretty much the basis why we have.
There's a rule for everything,
Yeah.
and everyone follows that rule. That's the other
Generally,
thing.
they follow the rules.
Sometimes,
Okay.
yeah.
But then
So-
in innovation, Switzerland is also top of the pops.
Yeah. Okay. So Emma, ranking here it is.
Okay.
So Zurich number 1.
Okay.
Vienna number 2. You good with that?
Oh, gosh, yes.
Okay. Geneva number 3.
We're not so
or
sure.
Geneva.
We're not so
Anyway,
sure.
I don't know if we have
Sorry,
any
Geneva.
Genevois in the audience here today. Copenhagen number 4. Yeah.
Very much so, yeah.
Yeah. Okay, that's good.
Auckland?
Auckland number 5. Too far. I mean, out of sight, out of mind. But anyway, I'm sure it's. No, listen. Auckland is a lovely place, and we employ lots of Kiwis. Amsterdam number 6.
I'm not sure about it. I don't know.
Amsterdam.
I had
no.
a very bad experience. I used to live in Amsterdam for a
Yeah.
year, like 20 years ago.
Emma, Amsterdam. No.
no.
Okay.
Grotty.
Yeah.
Bits are lovely and in theory
Frankfurt.
amazing.
Frankfurt
but
number 7.
bored
Man.
silly.
Wow,
Not
why?
at all. No
Why?
way. Lovely
Oh.
airport. Beautiful airport.
I don't know about. Well, listen,
Zurich
they've got great retail at the airport. That's all I
Yeah,
can say.
and you've got lovely plane
Vancouver number 7.
Yeah,
or
give
it's
that to
tied. It's
Vancouver.
tied. Yeah, but I'd also Vancouver a bit grotty. It's going through a tough moment. Bern. There we go. Bern number 9.
I don't know.
I love Bern. She
I don't
doesn't
know.
I love it.
And
Great city for a capital.
I
Number
can't
10
remember
number
if I've
10
ever been to Bern. That's the
number
problem.
10. That's the problem.
If I have, I've forgotten.
Yeah, you
Emma,
went through
I
so
guess
quickly.
you're not the only
then
one.
Basel number 10.
Yeah, cute.
Okay, okay, we're all right with that. Then very quickly, Munich number 11, Sydney 12, Toronto 13, The Hague number 4. See, there's The Hague as well, like right beside Amsterdam, same place almost, right? It's too close to sort of
Top worst
break it
city
apart.
on the list.
Wellington 14, 15, tied with Dusseldorf. Now Stockholm 18, etc. Worst cities.
Top 3 worst cities.
Tripoli, I think
Khartoum.
Khartoum,
Baghdad. Bangui.
and Bangui.
Have you been to the
I've
three?
not been to. I've been to Tripoli. And
That's
actually-
number 10 on the worst
yeah,
cities for expats.
I was in Tripoli, but more, and it's like
Yeah. Ouagadougou number 9.
Ouagadougou number. I love saying Ouagadougou.
We love
right?
Ouagadougou, don't we?
Okay, Singapore, which is the only Asian city. This is kind of remarkable. Singapore is the only Asian city to rank on the Mercer in the top 50, which is really
What number is
something.
it at?
Actually, it's at number 30, and we're crossing to Singapore right now because our correspondent, Naomi Xu Elegant, is standing by. Good afternoon, Naomi.
Good morning, Tyler. How are you?
I'm very well, thanks. So is Singapore feeling bad about this ranking? I mean, I know you've done very well in the global bureaucracy stakes. We'll talk about that in a moment as well. But does it surprise you, someone who's lived all over the world, of course, spent a lot of time in Asia? 30 is quite low for a city, which is, of course, it's a global financial center. It is a place which it often sort of talks about its quality of life. And of course, Singaporeans have a lot of pride, and the Singaporeans love a ranking. So I'm wondering, how are they feeling about number 30? Of course, still, they're the number one in Asia, so that makes them feel good. But how is this being analyzed in the Straits Times? Or are they just ignoring it altogether?
My guess is that the folks at the Economic Development Board are already, having an emergency meeting, drafting up lists of why they were so low, because I think they really do pay a lot of attention to the rankings. Although hopefully, being the only Asian city in the top 50 is some solace. That is kind of shocking as well. Like, where's Tokyo? Where's Hong Kong?
Yeah, well, exactly. I was thinking, I can get. That's actually on the top 50. I mean, they're somewhere, from 51 down to 100. I do find that the list is quite surprising. Obviously, incredibly Eurocentric. And I listen. I don't think it's very fair. Myriam, jump in on this one because we're talking about Bern. Tiny. No international airport.
Cute.
I
I know.
Right. I mean, Belp. I mean, where can you fly from Belp? Awful name for an airport. But we like the Belperknolle, don't we? We love a Belperknolle cheese. However,
what is a Belperknolle?
A Belperknolle is a very hard cheese
that you grate.
Very
like
nice on a pasta. No, it's not like a parmigiano, and it's sort of covered in this amazing sort of different crust, but like a pepper crust, right? Great, very good. But we're in Singapore with Naomi, so let's get back to that. But anyway, I think there needs to be a bit, and this is where our quality of life ranking is a little bit different, because you need to be a globally connected city.
Yeah.
Bern, no. Basel,
there
moderately.
However, there is a direct train from Zurich Airport that goes directly to Bern and Basel.
I know.
So what?
But
So
doesn't
what?
count.
So what?
Okay,
but listen, let's go back to rankings, Naomi. Singapore's civil service just ranked best in the world, according to Oxford University's School of Public Policy. So what does that mean? This means that that they're going to process my income tax faster. Does it mean that I'm going to get, not that Singapore is big on social benefits, but what does this mean? And what is sort of the ranking sort of stand for?
I mean, I have to say, it doesn't sound like a very exciting topic, but until I moved here, you really do feel how amazing the civil service is. They have this sort of super app that the government uses that your entire life is combined into, and everything works very smoothly, and everybody knows who you are. There's never any queue, at the public hospitals. Everything's clean and lovely, and it's pretty amazing. I moved here from Hong Kong, which also has a world-class civil service, I would say. So I kind of had a high bar, but even compared to that, Singapore is pretty amazing. I think it's definitely, and that was on the Straits Times front page, by the way, because so they are keeping track.
Why don't we just travel across the border? It is, of course, we're in the period of festivals and markets. But I want to talk about the Christmas market offer in Singapore in a moment. Your neighbors in Malaysia, up in KL, there's of course an art book fair underway as we speak.
There is, yeah. I'm sad I'm missing it this weekend. KL has become kind of a really cool creative hub. And I mean, if we're going to talk about the quality of life rankings, I would say one area where Singapore does slip is the kind of more spontaneous, I would say, cultural events and artistic communities. There's a lot of government supported stuff here, but the kind of thing that happens in a more gritty city where, low rents really benefit artists is really happening over the border in KL. There's a lot of artists, a lot of independent magazine makers. We've covered a couple in the stack in our podcast. Like Process Magazine is a really good one. Muso Trees. It's a really exciting time to be making little magazines in Malaysia.
And is there, would you say, a level of freedom as well? Of course, oftentimes we see Malaysia as a more conservative country. Of course, Singapore is also conservative. Singapore also has, an overlay or underlay, you could say, of course, press freedom issues, which of course come under question. But if you think about, what you're able to achieve maybe as a Malaysian editor, Malaysian art director, do you have a bit broader license, do you think?
Yeah, I would say so. I mean, I think in both countries there are certain topics that for the good of the magazine and your creative future, probably you would avoid. But I think just the general atmosphere is a little more free. Again, like just the cost being less prohibitive. I think there's more room to kind of experiment and do weird stuff and meet people and not have to work like really demanding J job. Whereas here there are like amazing creatives who work in full-time tech companies and work for the government full-time, and they're poets on the side, which is its own kind of impressive, but very, very different in terms of a dynamic.
Maybe before we go, tell us about what Christmas looks like. Maybe we're not on Orchard Road, we're elsewhere. Of course, this is, Singapore is a city, a state, a country. Of course, super diverse in terms of its ethnic makeup. And it's always sort of curious to see, as you said, what when we sort of look up and down the region, what does Christmas look like in Hong Kong versus what does it look like, and of course, particularly sound like in Tokyo as well. Paint a little picture for us. And as you said, I believe you just went to check out a Christmas market in the island state as well.
I did this morning, yeah. It was like a bright and sunny, blue skies, 33 degrees Celsius, so perfect Christmas weather. But I went to a lovely little Christmas market in New Baru, which is this kind of new retail creative development space. And it's very open air. So it was really crowded. So we were all kind of stuffed in there, milling around, making our purchases. I was looking for mulled wine because I was like, whoever's serving that would be crazy, but I didn't manage to find a mulled wine stall. But the aircon was turned up. There was lots of pumpkin-colored handbags on sale. People really get into the spirit as much as they can, even though it's probably the least Christmassy atmosphere that you could find on the planet.
I was going to say 33C, almost warmer than the mulled wine would be. Juliet, you have something?
I'm so curious. So there was no mulled wine, but what was there to eat and drink? I'm so curious. Like gingerbread?
There was a free gin stall, which isn't really Christmassy at all. Yeah, they were handing out free gin, cherry blossom flavored, which seemed like a little crazy to partake in at 11 a.m., just like shots of gin.
Miriam's looking puzzled by that. She was like, the cherry blossom gin. Flavor. It's not Sakura season, but anyway.
And dumplings?
Singaporeans do love Japan, though. Yeah. No, there were cookies. There were kind of, I guess that's like a warm weather thing, right? So sometimes it's like a mixed bag of, the tinsel everywhere and then gin for some reason.
If I could just paint a very, very quick picture for you over here. So this is what's curious. You've talked about sort of cherry blossoms, and Miriam's actually got like a very large, almost cherry blossom on her jumper. And Juliet's wearing a mulled wine colored jumper as well.
It's a thing. It's a thing.
Season or not.
What are you wearing, Naomi?
I've never had I'm wearing like a t-shirt and I'm sweating in my house because it's with a fan on. It's so hot.
Listen, Juliet, being the tropical lady that she is, she's very jealous. Naomi Xu Elegant in Singapore, thank you very much. If we don't chat, have a very Merry Christmas. It's 10:50. You're listening to Monocle on Sunday. As you can hear, listeners, it's a little bit buzzier than it normally would be on a Sunday morning in our studio here in Zurich. That's because the Christmas market is underway. Juliet, of course, there's markets going on all over, of course, Zurich at the moment.
Yeah, but this is the main one.
Why is this one different? I mean, of course, it's very bijou and very small, right?
Yeah, and we don't have cherry blossom gin, but we have so much raclette and hot chocolate. We're going to be doing a hot chocolate tasting later on.
No, we're not. Oh, you are later in the day.
Later in the day.
Later in the day,
all
yes.
Of our faithful listeners are
don't go away,
tuned.
listeners, because Juliet's going to be taking over while I work on 25 budgets upstairs.
Far more
this.
exciting.
Yeah.
And then Naomi mentioned pumpkin-colored, I don't know what's, but I bought a pumpkin-colored puffer jacket from a gentleman who is here at the market.
Listen, Peter Hornung is here. Of course, he's been around this microphone many times before when we've done markets. He's the founder of Round Rivers. And listeners, if you're not familiar with Round Rivers, Peter's going to tell you all about it. Good morning, guten Morgen. Very nice to see you.
Good morning, Tyler. Hi, nice to meet you all. My name is Peter, the founder of Round Rivers, and what makes Round Rivers special is that we source plastic from the Limmat River here in Switzerland, and when we turn it into upcycled swimwear and puffer jackets, very locally within a radius of 140 kilometers only.
Okay, so we can come back to the logistics side, but I'm curious about this pumpkin-colored.
That was last year.
That was last year's purchase. Is it still in the collection this season, or was it a? I don't want to say it was a stinker, but did it sell?
I think she got the last one.
Okay.
It was sold out.
Was it on special?
Burnt orange.
When is it coming out, though? I mean, does it only make a premiere in Cortina? When do you wear it?
It clashed with the mulled wine colored pullover today. That's why I didn't wheel it out.
Okay, well, it could have been very, very of the season. Okay, so Peter, 140 radius. That means Switzerland, obviously, probably demands a little bit of Italy involved in this as well in the creation. Tell us about the collection, the season, how much you have to evolve the puffer jacket season after season. Do we go for more volume? Do we get a bit more trim? Or are you built around a series of classics? Because I think a lot of times you see so many companies that want to, of course, be in a sustainability space are saying, let's just design it right the first time so you don't have to then go and then buy the slimmed down version because that's what's in vogue the following season.
Yeah, absolutely. So at Round Rivers, we focus not to be super fashionable. So our focus is really to be classic, super sustainable. Comes with shapes that you can also wear for a couple of years at least. But I see two different opinions on my table. One is that people ask for more puffy versions because that's the trend where all the big brands go, and I personally love it because it just feels amazing, and you can wear just a t-shirt underneath and you feel like in summer, although you're in winter, because you don't really feel the puffer jackets on your skin. They're super light, they're super comfortable. I love this style, but on the other hand, I have to say that winter becomes warmer. We feel it also here in Switzerland. Therefore, the demand is higher in having also less volume puffer jackets, which I also had to learn, although I love the puffer jackets, the big ones. And now we have also thinner versions, and it turned out to be a good decision because it's the bestseller so far.
How much would you say that people are coming to because you have a sustainability story versus you just have great puffer jackets?
I would say 80% for the sustainable reason, and then 20% they just love to have this super trendy puffer jacket. Yeah.
Okay, Myriam, I don't know. This is the guess. I feel that you're more in a Loden world. You're more woolly.
But I need a puffer jacket.
You do need a puffer jacket.
Yeah, but here's the thing. I'm a rather petite person, so I very much welcome, the idea of a slimmer, less thicker puffer jacket. I also like to sort of hide a little, like a vest, maybe made out of puffer jackets, and I haven't invested in that yet. So sometimes
the stand is just over there. It's like we're talking
I'll go there
9 meters from here. So
because what I started to do is, in my apartment sometimes it gets a little chilly, and when I'm writing, when I'm working, I like to have just you need like your chest covered. You want to be puffy and warm. So
I promise you, we will have something.
But are you wearing a nightie? What are you wearing when you write?
No.
La perla.
No.
Yes, actually, yes.
No, but I like to be warm. Look at you. You're wearing a vest.
He's wearing monocle.
Wool. It's wool.
No, I like wool. I'm a big fan of cashmere, but of course, also I also like a nice little puffy thing. Yeah.
Now already. I have, because I haven't sort of explored the racks over there as well. Is swimwear on offer? Because this is also the season when many people, of course, leave Switzerland. People going to warmer climates. Everyone's heading off to the Maldives. Some people are going to Brazil and Kenya back to back that I know around this table. But yeah, is there swimwear on offer already? Because I'm wondering, is that part of the seasonal mix? Is it a constant for you?
I have more and more demands, honestly speaking, for the winter. But now we are just trying to sell out what we have, because there's something very exciting new coming up for Q1 25. And we are concentrating on circular economy, like all the brands are focusing right now. But there's non-swimwear piece existing in the world that is made of monomaterials. And monomaterials is the basis for circular economy. And
you were lost. Hang on, we're looking at each other like mononucleosis, monomaterials. Okay, walk us through it really fast.
Okay, circular economy. To be circular, you need to provide materials or products that are made of a monomaterial only.
Like only one.
That means
only one.
You only have one fiber, so you don't have a mix-up of different kind of fibers. So, for example, so far swimwear is made of elastane and polyester or polyamide. So that means you have kind of a 75% to 25%, and this is not targeting the circular economy, and it's super challenging to provide swimwear that is made of a monomaterial only. So in our case, as we source plastic from the river, it's always polyester, and now we found a way to make a swimwear which is super elastic without using elastane. So that provides us a fully circular product for the future, which is super, super exciting.
Very good. We're going to just wrap up very quickly. You're going to start baking, aren't you? This is like, we're in the season. What top in 20 seconds or less? What are you cooking?
I am making the maranzotti. Is it the maranzotti, the cream-filled brioche bun? So I have a brioche bun, a brioche dough proving at home, and I will fill it with whipped honey cream.
Okay, later today.
Yeah.
Okay, looking forward to those later in the
4
week.
4:00, my place.
What else? Okay, good. Hey, I'm heading up to the mountains, so we want some for the car, so we can swing by
Ship
maybe.
them to him.
Oh, man.
Okay,
Which is,
I know.
Yeah,
The
no,
pressure's on.
no.
Juliet, any cooking in your house today?
No, zero.
Zero.
I'm here all day.
Oh, that's true.
I'm
You
doing
are.
chocolate tasting.
You are doing chocolate tasting. But listen, if people cannot make it to the market today, because of course we have listeners all over the world, where else can they find you? Do you ship globally as well? If people need to get their hands on your products,
It's not the most sustainable way, but yes, we do.
This is, of course, part of the challenge. Myriam, very, very nice to see you. I think hopefully we'll see you before year. I think this is sort of the penultimate program from this base.
I love
we're going to be in London next week, so it's going to be the Christmas market in London next week. But Peter Honing from Round Rivers, very, very good to see you. Myriam, listen, I'm going to be by for those buns in the coming hours. Juliet, of course, hopefully we'll see. But I mean, you've got all this like major crazy travel happening all through Christmas, which is nuts. To our handler, Lucinda Smith, also huge thanks joining us, of course, with that update on Syria from Istanbul. Andrew Tuck in London, also Naomi Xu Elegant joining us from Singapore. Producers today, Desiree Bentley and also Emma Nelson and Carlotta Ribello. Our studio manager, of course, was Desiree here and Sarah Nichol in London. I'm Tyler Brûlé. Monocle on Sunday is back same time next week. Different city. We're in London. Goodbye.